If it wasn't for bugs or performance issues, I cannot stress how strong of a contender Jedi Survivor would have been for Game of the Year. Today's war, in terms of conversation surrounding the different console powers and how now 60 FPS is a priority for some gamers, it appears that your game is not allowed to have any technical issues anymore. You see, these technical issues have always existed. Batman Arkham Knight on PC, basically unplayable, is the least, game that you would think had any of these issues. But today, it seems more and more of these games having these issues are bringing up a lot more conversations. So the Game of the Year discussion right now falls on the back of games like Marvel Spider-Man 2 or possibly other titles like Zelda Tears of the Kingdom. Now, these contenders right now are being discussed among the gaming community. Some people have sworn that Tears of the Kingdom has a high probability and a high chance of winning this. Some people have also claimed that maybe Zelda might not necessarily be that game that has the capability. It's possibly going to be the new Spider-Man game. All of this is still left up to the jury because we haven't played the Spider-Man game, but you can kind of give this particular new game coming out that benefit of saying, well, we've seen multiple iterations of their own paradigm, and all three games were strong games. If they can make the final game somewhat special, maybe add a little bit of that seasoning to it that they've been hiding in their studio over there at Insomniac, perhaps they might be able to compete very strongly to possibly shake Zelda out of its position. So let's talk a little bit about this, discussion here about possible Game of the Year. Zelda Tears of the Kingdom has been a strong contender. In fact, Breath of the Wild easily took Game of the Year. I think in the year that God of War 2018 also came out, Spider-Man 2018 was contending. So Spider-Man 2018 did not necessarily have the juice. God of War took it. For some reason, fans favored it more. And, it just happened to be the game that landed Game of the Year. Now, when it came down to also the conversation about, say, Ragnarok possibly taking it, there was no way that was going to happen because Elden Ring was just a phenomenal game that defied everything Western video game experience based. So it just was not necessarily the most convenient time to bring that conversation to light. So thinking about all of this, what would Spider-Man 2 have to do to actually bring it to that Game of the Year status? And let's also caveat this video. Whether or not the game wins Game of the Year, it doesn't matter to fans. I know how we fans are. You don't care about Game of the Year. You just want to play a game that is dear to you. Well, number one, the game would have to, in my opinion, somewhat defeat the stigma that is seen, around superhero video games. A lot of times when a superhero game comes out, it has to, in a sense, defeat this weight that is already leaning against it in the eyes of a lot of casual gamers. You see, a game like Gotham Knights, many people were expecting it to be one thing, in a sense, and for the game not necessarily to follow the general knowledge or general categorization as it is known in video games, threw a lot of people off. It threw people who were probably new to superhero games, maybe comic lovers that said, hey, we can play Batgirl, Nightwing, Robin, and Red Hood. Let's check this out. But the game did not necessarily meet that mark. So that stigma of having your game follow a specific pattern, and also the stigma of your game being a superhero game, which is probably going to be niche, is definitely something that must be overcome if this particular title called the Spider-Man game is to be Game of the Year in my mind. And if you even go ahead and think about it, like I mentioned at the beginning of this video, Insomniac would have to really take this particular game to a whole different dimension. And I think that that's actually their plan. I was reading on Twitter, a lot of people have been making comments. I didn't necessarily take a screenshot of this because there's a lot of information you have to go through. And a developer, or at least a director, mentioned that the opening section that they showed us in the unveiling is probably somewhere close to the beginning of the game when they did the PlayStation Showcase. And he said that that's actually one of the very first aspects of a game he's directed by himself. And one thing he said that caught my ear was, and that's not even the craziest stuff that is in the game. We have a lot more to show you. You see, Insomniac's going to have to bring in a good amount of gamers into this conversation by wowing them, taking everything that they've been able to successfully achieve in the other Spider-Man games and go ahead and, accentuate it in a way that attracts other players. I know my Spider-Man gameplay may not necessarily be the best. Somebody was making fun of my other Spider-Man gameplay in my other video. The game lags on my 4080 build. Whenever I put my input, it's actually weird. And this gameplay you're seeing here, I was on the phone with my brother when I was actually recording it. So bear with me if the gameplay actually sucks, because I know some of you Spider-Man fans, you really think your free flow combat is really that great. Yeah, right. Yeah, I got to throw some shade at you, man. How dare you talk to me like that in my in my comment section? He literally insulted me and said I was like a 12-year-old with the disease. Anyways, this is basically what you're going to need to come in to kind of bring a lot more people into your ecosystem, telling a story that's compelling, representing that story in a way that people get to see Spider-Man in action. Now, I know we have Miles Morales and I know we have Peter Parker, but these two characters on their own right, in their own merit, are loved by a lot of fans. But here's something that needs to happen. Both characters need to be balanced very well for the story. Multiple protagonist games are kind of strange in a sense. And let me explain. I know it's been done. I know we've seen successful iterations of multiple protagonists, in some form or the other. But for the last few years, we haven't necessarily seen them at the scale that we're seeing them now. And so far, anyone who doesn't do it in a way that everybody likes is literally going to take a big hit. Wink, wink, I'm looking at you. Gotham Knights, one of my favorite games out there, and I know it sounds crazy to say it, but they tried their best as a development team coming out the door their very first experience. I strongly believe that a team at Warner Brothers Montreal, if they get their hands on another team-based game without any corporate interference and the meddling that we get to see going on in there, might be able to go on in and do something good with something like, say, a Teen Titans game or another team-based game based around superheroes, and actually flesh things out, taking a lot of the feedback that they got from the Gotham Knights game. These are some of the things that I strongly believe can be done. Now, with Spider-Man trying to do the team-based aspect with Miles and Peter together, the question of balancing both of them and doing it right is where that secret sauce is that I strongly believe can possibly overwhelm this game and have the Spider-Man games take Game of the Year. You see, because it really does come down to these two games. As much as my most anticipated game, the Jedi game, is out there, it really did face a lot of those issues at launch. Whenever the performance problems hit, this was basically the first big issue that we got to see. Now, I'm not saying that Insomniac is not liable to fall prey to, performance issues, even though they may be making their game on one platform. But that's usually, I don't think we've ever seen that before. Has anybody ever seen a PlayStation exclusive do anything crazy on the PlayStation console? I don't think I've ever seen it. I have seen Spider-Man bug out on me on PC, and even my, Miles Morales, it has a lag whenever I'm playing it. Both Spider-Man games have a lag when I'm playing it in terms of input control. I don't know what's going on that build of my PC anyways, but those are the only issues I've seen, but I've never seen any problems on the PlayStation. So if that is a standard that the game is going to be able to get in place, then I think it really does have a chance. And then finally, the release date. If the game comes out before the deadline to be, counted into the running for Game of the Year, then it will make it at least into that running. And if it doesn't, then it's not going to be able to run for Game of the Year, at least for the 2023 window. So this is definitely something that needs to be looked at in regard to weighing all of what we will take for this game to be Game of the Year, in the sense of, voting for the game and so on and so forth. And again, I end the video with saying, I know you Spider-Man fans, you don't care. Whether it be Game of the Year or not, you guys just want to play the game. I understand. I feel you. Thanks for watching the video. Appreciate you guys' time and audience, and hopefully we'll talk pretty soon in another one. Peace out.